And see, just like that, now we're live. And so anybody can be watching this episode of Long Box Punk. That's me. I'm Chris, and I am joined by an overseas pal, Sean Golding. Thank you, sir, for making time in your late evening over in London to hang out with me on just what is a chaotic day here in the States. So I appreciate you. Looking forward to having a good time talking with you.
That's all right. Thank you for having me. And yes, I can imagine. I mean, it's chaotic here at the moment. I can imagine it's a lot worse over there, but we can avoid that.
Yeah. Let's get it all out of the way now. Politics are awful. Nobody's good, and the middle class are always just going to be buried. So that's the that now it's out of the way.
I did realize there's this as well. It's election day for you. It's Guy Fawkes Day essentially over here. V for Vendetta Day. So we can talk
Yes.
about that instead.
Yeah, I haven't been able to watch it yet. I have been too busy with my actual job to watch it. But I try and watch it sometime this week because I love that movie. I love it so much.
Very
I
good.
mean, Hugo Weaving, like, come on, dude. How can you get so much emotion out of a Guy Fawkes
Yeah,
mask that
face.
never
Yeah.
changes? Like, how do you do that? If I could figure that out, I think I could change careers and get into acting instead of podcasting, but that's not going to happen. And I'm happy where I'm at because I get to talk about rad indie comic creators like you. Wow, look at that spin.
Thank you.
So I have just been word vomiting. So tell me a little bit about your origin story. Like, how did you get into comics? And then how did you like get into writing and creating comics?
Yeah, sure. I think when I was a kid, what I don't probably have is I had the comic book store down the road, or I was asking my uncle to get me this comic every week. I think when I was younger, I definitely had the two that I remember reading were Batman, like probably most kids who grew up, and the Phantom, which I found out recently it was a lot bigger in Australia, and it's still a lot bigger in Australia than it is anywhere else. I don't know why that's the case, but they're the two I definitely remember. But I guess my origin story when I was growing up was anything that was fantasy or anything that was science fiction. I think the most formative memory I think I have in that regard was when I was about 6 or 7, finding my dad's like VHS set of Star Wars, the original trilogy, and I think I can still remember watching them for the first time. But no, it was yeah. So I was very much just picking into anything I could get my hands on, really. And I guess Batman sort of was bigger, and then obviously there's all the animated series, and you go from there.
Yeah.
And then I probably had a break from comics for probably my teenage years and early 20s. I mean, there was still everything, I mean, Lord of the Rings came out, like still all the new Star Wars films came out. It was definitely not a break from sort of anything sci-fi or fantasy related. But then maybe about 10 years or so ago, I got back into comics and reading comics in a much bigger way. And rather than I mean, obviously everyone sees the Marvel films and all that, but rather than that side of the comics, it was much more, I don't want to say indie at that stage, much more of the more indie, the Image, the Dark Horse, those sort of ones. And then from there, discovered the much wider scene that is indie comic books and haven't looked back, I guess.
That's great. I followed a very similar path with like grew up reading. I was a Marvel kid, so I like X-Men will forever be my team. My books, like Jim Lee's X-Men on the blue and gold teams, are just like peak comic for me. And it's stupid that like I'm still getting my hair just stood up like, yeah, Jim Lee's X-Men, let's go. I just have a visceral reaction to that because I always felt like I always found myself in those comics. And so like with Batman and the Shadow, like those are two kind of darker characters, right? And so like were you drawn to that darkness of it, or was it just like the striking visual that they had of like the silhouettes and the art that was in them?
I think it's probably both. I mean, when I was as well as it's what you had access to, it's what I had, it's what I saw, and that they were the things that you put anything in front of a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old who's even remotely into that, they'll devour whatever you give them, I guess. But I think there probably is an element of that darkness to it. That sounds a bit grim, doesn't it? The darkness. That's all I'm about. No, I think there definitely is an element to that, and I know, even sort of growing up, you sort of play the bad guys in the video games, and in terms of even the even darker Batman ones, I think those obviously three Christopher Nolan ones were peak Batman, and I think I imagine will remain peak Batman for me in terms of films anyway. But no, I think that there definitely is something about that, and I think I'm probably drawn to in anything sort of characters or plot lines that are darker. And I guess it's probably old hat now, but any of the sort of more anti-hero sort of heroes, someone who've got a bit of a flawed character, or anyone like that, I guess, is probably far more my cup of tea than, say, a Superman type, just always good, and can do no wrong sort of character.
Yeah, I would agree completely, because I used to tell folks before I read more Superman books, like, the only good Superman book until maybe like 5 years ago for me was The Death of Superman. Like, and it sounds grim, right? And it's not because they necessarily are like, oh, good, they killed him off, he's gone. But it showed that he wasn't perfect at everything all the time. And so then I would tell people that, and like the diehard, like, I have a Superman tattoo on my chest. It was like, oh, geez, I'm sorry. They would then be like, you need to read, like, have you read Frank Quietly's Superman run? Have you read, the Superman Unchained, or the Death of Clark Kent? Or like, there's all of these extra stories that I just wasn't reading, because I was like, oh, he's just a god. Like, that's boring to me. And so, like, I very much was a gritty, like, Batman villains. Robin for me was always more interesting than Batman, as I've learned, and like as I've gotten older. I think Nightwing is the best DC hero in terms of character development, what he's gone through, the growth that we've seen from like being the young sidekick that didn't have anything to now being the leader of the Titans that have taken the place of the Justice League, like all of those things that he's gone through. And I just think he's a complex character. And for me, Batman was always like, I'm dark and angry and I'm beating up everybody in my city. And so, like, like, which also I freaking love. I love seeing Batman punch people in the face. And so, like, that's the beauty of comics, is that there's tales with characters for some person that likes that type of story. And then there's, there's the fantasy side of Batman. I don't know why we're going on a Batman rant right now. But like, there's a fantasy side of Batman with like Ra's al Ghul and being raised from the dead. Like, that's very macabre. And then there's also the like gritty crime noir Batman, like the recent Dan Jurgens First Night run, that were like the magazine size, like the very first Batman in the 40s tales, where he's like fighting crime bosses, and I'm gonna shoot you with a Tommy gun, like, and he's like, no, you're not, suck, like, there's Batman for everybody. And if you expand that out, there's more than just superheroes in comics.
Exactly.
And one of the things that I love in comics are punk rock bands. See, it's all coming through.
Look at these segues.
You just gotta trust the process. But like, I love seeing any punk band or any concert represented in a comic book, because anytime I see that on the page, I'm transported back to concerts when I was not pushing 40, that I was like, in the pit and in the front, and like sweat through everything. And, my ankles were bleeding from everybody stomping around. Like, I have all those memories, and seeing those show up in comic books is always fun for me, because I'm taken back to those moments. So with Guns of Brixton, which is the super fun series that you've got, is that from a place of, I was at these shows and I want to represent that in a comic? Like, how did you arrive at wanting to write this story?
Yeah, I think that there definitely is elements of being at concerts and wanting music and live music, especially being something that I is from all sorts of music, probably an embarrassing range of music that for some listeners on here that we don't need to get into, but definitely, yeah, that is something that was, you know, quite important. Where it came from was, and I guess we can, again, we'll use this segue to get into it. So where Guns of Brixton actually came from, the first thing I came up with was the band name. So Guns of Brixton is about this band called Rachel and the Heads of State, and it was actually that name that I came up with. And then I thought, what sort of band would Rachel and the Heads of State be? And it just felt quite almost going down that band topic, but it did sound quite political and a bit anarchic, and sort of I thought they're going to be a punk rock band or a metal band of some kind if we're going to stick with that name, and we did stick with that name, and sort of it all evolved from there, really. So and actually just on that name, that did sort of, one of the references that I was able to sort of just scatter into the first episode, first issue. It's late here; it's like 11 o'clock at night. Was that when they do come out on stage, they are wearing these masks of sort of world leaders around the world, and sort of they rip them off and throw them into the crowd and reveal that it's actually these 4 girls in this punk band, and then start rocking out, I guess.
Yeah, which is great because so I posted the review earlier for issue 1, which is available now on the YouTube channel, but someone on Threads responded and said, this book reminds me of a band that I played in years and years ago called the Nuns of Brixton. And I was like, dude, shut up. So I did a quick Google, and they were doing the video that I found that came up first is they were dressed as nuns, bunch of freaking punk rocker dudes with giant beards and then the nun cowls and everything. And they were playing a cover of a Clash song. And like the Clash is just that, like, they're the band that got me into punk and made me fall in love with that genre. But I was just like, dude, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. And immediately I was like, it's so perfect with this book because they come out with the masks. Like, that's absolutely.
They're the opposite. Instead of it's the punk rockers dressed as women, as nuns. Instead, it's the women in the band dressed as other people. I've just looked them up, and I'm definitely going to have to check them out once we're off this recording. But that looks great.
It's such a fun, like, I was just like, I am supposed to be working right now, but I need to know more. It was so rad. And I was just like, dude, how in the world is, like, and this comes up all the time where I'm just struck by how huge and massive the world is, but then how small it can feel, where someone that I have a connection with on social media has history in a band that shares part of a name of a comic book that I just what? And I was just like, this is so meta right now. I'm just
100%. But I guess that's the influence of, you mentioned the Clash there, which is obviously sort of where the name Guns of Brixton came from, and as a series name. I was actually living in Brixton at the time. Again, another happy coincidence. So I was like, well, the band's going to be based around here. There's a good punk rock or sort of 70s music legacy. I think even David Bowie's from the area, the Clash are from there. And then so I based them there at about an embarrassing amount of time, probably 3 or 4 years later. I've been working on this sort of as an idea, as different versions for about 7 years before it came out. It would have been about maybe 4 years later. I was like, hey, that's a name for the series. And I went from there, which was, I'm glad it did, because then we got to, I'm holding this up for anyone that's watching it, but we got to sort of turn that Clash cover into the cover of issue 1 and sort of have a riff off of that, along with a lot of other references scattered, not just to Clash songs, but to a lot of other punk rock bands and bands throughout there, which again, maybe we'll come on to some of them. I'm happy to give some away, but some I think people need to go and find for themselves,
Yeah. There's definitely a joy in finding those Easter eggs. Yeah. And so now that I know that there's a ton planted in there, I'm going to go back and reread it and just like have those antenna up.
Yeah, there's about, I think maybe about five or so in the first issue, 5 or 6, sort of hidden in there in various ways, and it's getting harder and harder as the sort of issues go on to try and find new bands to reference or not. But there are some other happy coincidences. So one I'll say. So there's a character in one of the 4 characters in the band. Her name is Sheena, and that literally came from the Ramones song. Sheena is a punk rocker, so obviously she's a punk rocker in the band. Someone else that I was talking to about it, they're like, "Oh, I thought that Sheena was a reference to the Smiths." I was like, "Oh, right, cool. It's both, I guess." I'll claim that one. So it is nice when those other coincidences fall into place. I wish it was one of the other character names that I hadn't actually thought of. But no, it was the same one.
You don't have any Jones in the band, or
they don't actually have they don't have any last names actually, but well, I haven't named them, but there are. I mean, the character of Rachel there sort of is a bit of a Joan Jett sort of lookalike character, and she'd be that one. There's one who's blonde, which is probably a Debbie Harry reference, if anyone else. So they look like people. Like the visuals of them came from people and other sort of other singers, but or sort of musicians, but sort of not specifically necessarily named after them.
That's cool. So speaking of the art, how did you and Renzo connect? And like, is he just as much into the music scene as you are?
Yeah. So, I mean, how we connected was, I guess maybe even we've been sort of going all over the place, haven't we? Maybe I need to go back to sort of where this, where the idea came from, or sort of in terms of writing this. I think I've been, ever since I was a kid, I've been dabbling in writing all sorts of different things. And then when I had this idea, I was like, oh, it would be a comic, maybe a screenplay, but that's even harder to get done. I was like, it should be a comic. And I started writing this comic. And I was like, yeah, I don't know anyone that can draw. Like, who's going to draw? Who's going to do this artwork for me? I started talking to a friend of mine who's a graphic designer. And he's like, I'm not an artist. I'm a graphic designer.
They're very different.
Exactly. And I was like, that was as close as I had. So it was an idea. That's again, maybe some of the delays came from that and just sort of sitting on it. And then a couple of years ago, actually it was probably a year or so ago, at least, that I started actually looking into finding artists. And I just posted on DeviantArt, which I know it's either there or Reddit. I think a lot of people find that don't have any connections to the industry sort of find their first connections. And you make a post and you say, oh yeah, I'm looking for an artist, and then here's my email address, and I wake up the next morning, there's like 100 emails in there, which I think I found every time I've posted anywhere. I posted recently on Reddit, sort of looking for some, just sort of suss out size of the market and looking for maybe some alternate cover artists as well. And then again, it was sort of 30 messages on there and 20 messages on Instagram. I was like, I don't have time for this at the moment. I posted this at the wrong time. But there are, again, that has been good, being able to sort of go through and find new artists. But yeah, no, connected on DeviantArt. And when I had, I've been quite open about this before. The sort of the initial idea was to have a more realistic style, and so that was just what I had in my head the whole way through. And I got some other artists to do some test pages, and sort of one in color, one that's just black and white. And then I started speaking to Renzo, and he's like, I've got a great idea. I know exactly what this is going to look like. And yes, I think he is very much, or has been very much, in the sort of music scene in Argentina as well, going to concerts, enjoying these same sort of bands. He, again, coming up with the ideas of some of the cover art being references to to bands and the Clash in that case. But sort of we were talking about a whole series of different covers, all that sort of stuff. So definitely knows this stuff in terms of the music scene as well. But and I was like, oh, okay, great. Well, sure, let's see it. Let's sort of commission a couple of test pages. And then when I first saw it, I was like, I didn't know what I wanted until I saw what I wanted, and now I know exactly what I want. And I think the artwork has just brought it to life so much more. And I mean, I'm not sure if you've got some, maybe I know on your review you put some pages up, and we can maybe, I mean, I can hold some of it up, but actually that probably won't even do it justice. There's a lot of maybe we can share some pages, or there's a lot of artwork on my Instagram, or people could just go and read the book. But
that would be ideal.
That would be ideal. But
just
in the
go and read it.
And it's just the the bright colors, which sort of are very much there's the cover there. The bright colors, which are very much a a sort of reference to the bright, punk rock logos and punk rock sort of outfits that you would have seen in the 70s and 80s. There's this sort of evil villain vibes, but these sort of colors here, and then and also just the art style just brings such a pace to the drawing and sort of reading through it. Like, I read through it now and I'm like, you read through it so much quicker than I know I would if it was. Obviously, this is again part of the process that I've been learning, sort of how much when you're as a reader, you don't necessarily, you know what the art is good, and when you see a good story and you sort of get immersed in it, but sort of isolating how the art really accentuates the pace of the story, which is where we wanted to get to. Whereas I think a more realistic style would probably have slowed it down and not necessarily brought the pace to it. And I think learning that, as sort of have dabbled in writing other things as well, other comics even, but the first one that I've actually said, no, we're doing this now, we're creating it. That's been such a process to learn that, but it's been so enjoyable to learn that and see sort of that collaborative process, and how you can how that brings so much more out of just some words you put on a page, which then when you see the artwork, you're like, I need to change that because this will sound so much better next to that artwork if I say that instead. So that process it's been a lot of fun going through and sort of working with the team on that.
That's cool. So has that been a lot of, like, have there been a lot of those moments where you get the pages back and you're like, nope, rewriting this, like this panel is going to make sense differently? Like, has there been a lot of that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's, especially in the sort of panels completely changing is sort of in when we've just been going through sketches and sort of his layout of the pages. I think I guess how I write it is sort of like a film script. Sort of, I've got some action on the panel. This is what the panel will look like, and then here's and then obviously the script. I know everyone has a sort of different style of writing that, but then what Renzo sort of brings to it, I see it as like, there's a panel and that's the angle you see it at, and then we've got these like high angle shots looking down on the band here, and sort of then the camera will move around, which I think definitely adds to the pace. But that's probably where the bigger rewrites happen, and then once we sort of get to the colored artwork, we get we're a lot closer, and it's maybe some script edits based on some facial expressions and all that sort of stuff. But there's definitely been some pages, especially earlier on. I think you sort of get used to working with someone, and as I'm editing, as we're working on issue 3 now, which I think you mentioned at the start. I think as there he is, he's in the chat. G'day, Renzo. We definitely have some. There's definitely a lot more rewrites at that stage.
That's cool, and I love just seeing this kind of support of like having him watching this as we're talking, and sounding off too. So like I even though, so you're in London, you said he's in Argentina.
Yeah.
So like, even though there's all of that geographical distance, it feels like the two of you have developed like a really close-knit working relationship, in that like you can kind of anticipate his strengths and how he's going to show the page. And that, like, do you find that you're writing towards some of those strengths, like knowing what he brings to the table, or has that changed how you're writing?
Yeah, I think definitely has, especially as I said, maybe in the later issues and some of the editing I'm doing there. What I'd actually written sort of 5 or 6 issues actually, which I'm now trying to work back into 5. I think issue 4 and 5 might end up being more than the 22 pages that the others have been, but that doesn't matter when you're doing it yourself, right? You don't have to stick to print sizes. It can be not as long as
indie comics.
Yeah, exactly. But I think as I've been rewriting those later issues, having had issue 1 and then issue 2 sort of under our belts, I think it's definitely when you know what you're working with. Otherwise, it is just, writing can be, I guess writing, the first draft of anything is not necessarily a lonely process, because you sort of, you get stuck into it and you really like it, but it's, you don't have that collaborative process, which I guess comes with making a, I guess it's sort of, making a comic book, or it's not quite making a film. There's a lot more people making a film, but there's a lot more people involved than, say, writing a novel, where yes, you'll have the editor, but you've got a lot more work you're doing by yourself before you've got other people sort of feeding in and putting their points of view on it. And I guess it's, in some ways it makes it eeasier, right? There's less pressure just on the writer, because you've got other people to bring it to life. But obviously, if the art and the story don't, if there's a disconnect between them, then it won't be a good finished product, and it won't go as far, I guess.
Yeah. So with the issues that you've got planned, are you like, how are you releasing them? Are you doing like crowdfunding for each of them? Or are you like uploading them to Global Comics and then like seeing what happens? Like, how does that process work for you?
Yeah, that was another process that I think was definitely a learning curve. I was like, yeah, I'll just, screw it. We'll just commit. We'll just do sort of issue 1 and, well, sort of story arc 1, and then see what happens. Which on one hand has been great, but I think the crowdfunding angle is definitely something I'm going to explore moving forward. I think not just to like, sort of get the artwork done, which obviously there is, I guess on any sort of indie comic, that's where, I guess I think it's fair, because the art, the art side of it is the, well, you sort of live and die by that. And it's the bit that I think probably, I don't want to say it takes longer, but it's definitely sort of is more intensive. Whereas writing just by yourself, you can dip in and out of it. So obviously, I guess with indie comics, a lot of the risk is sort of taken on by the writer, which completely fair. But I think, just also building the other thing that's been really, I guess, difficult, although the community is great, and people like yourself sort of supporting it and saying, oh, here's this creator from the other side of the world that has just put out a book, I'll put him on my podcast. So truly sort of, again, I'm sort of such a welcoming community, and it sort of couldn't thank the community enough for that. But just, I think the crowdfunding also just helps build a community. If nothing else, I think it is where a lot of people are going. And rather than sort of throwing your stuff on Instagram or throwing your stuff on Threads or Twitter, which we're not talking politics, but no thanks at the moment, all these different platforms where, there are these communities. But I think the sort of Kickstarter community, I think, is where a lot of people go and, oh, what's new? And there was a lot of people just saying, great, oh, that looks interesting. I might not fund that, but I'll give them a follow and then see what happens. And I might read it later if it gets picked up. So I think that there's definitely an angle that from that side, I think I'll probably look to explore moving forward.
That's cool. And I love that you said that, because I always feel bad that like I had to set a budget for myself, like just for Kickstarters, because there's so many good comics out there that I just want to back everything. And I quickly learned, like, I can't afford to do that.
Exactly.
But like, to your point, that like you can follow creatives on Kickstarter, and then, if they end up collecting the first 4 issues or something, like maybe you can do the trade instead of, committing to backing every individual campaign leading up to it or whatnot. So it's definitely like, and like every little thing helps. I've had plenty of people that I'm like, hey, I'm tapped like budget wise, but like I'll share your campaign anytime I see it, pop up on any of my feeds. Like if you're sharing it, I'll say something quick about it and share it myself, so that I'm not just like hitting repost, and it like, that costs me nothing. And I like to do it because then, I have people replying like, I had no idea about this thing. Like, how do I find it? And it's like, click the link in the thing. It's right. I made it easy for you.
Exactly. And I guess to that end, there is actually one on Kickstarter at the moment that I have backed, and I didn't find it through there, but through, again, sort of had tested the water on other projects and working with other artists. And there's another music-based one on there called Box of Tapes, which they're actually releasing as a graphic novel series, and they've recorded an album to go alongside it. and like each episode's a song, and the whole thing's an EP. And I think it looks great. So there's another one for your list for the music, the sort of music scene. Don't know where your budget's at, but
just what my wallet needs. Yeah. Hey, we're in a new month now, so.
Oh well, great. Exactly. But yeah, so I think I mean, going back to your actual question, which is how am I releasing it? Where can people get it? So I just I released the first one. I was like, chuck it on Amazon, see what happens, and then quickly sort of found, where else can I put this out? So it's now on it's on Amazon, it's on Global Comics, it's on there's an Australian-based platform called Comics.one. They've just released an app where you with a reader on it as well. You can buy digital versions, and it's available on a UK store called Shift, and we've actually used them to do the print run as well. So we've got print copies available of issue 1 and issue 2. They've got a print to order setup. So if anyone does, I mean, postage costs might be easier to buy multiple issues 1 through wherever in bulk to get them shipped overseas anywhere. But it is available print to order, and I'm trying to constantly grow the number of places that it is available, to help find that audience wherever we can find it.
Yeah, that's great. There's also there's storefront modes on websites like Fund My Comic, and I think Indiegogo and Zoop are the other ones besides Kickstarter. And they have just once you get the initial funding, and because you've already got the 2 books in hand, it could be something like incredibly low, or to help fund the artwork for the 3rd one. But then you can just set it at storefront mode, and anybody, when they come across it, can then find it that way too. So there's plenty of Kickstarter is definitely the massive one. But then there's also all of these other alternative options that different groups are finding their communities by doing those. And some of them have super active owners that you're like, this link doesn't work, or this thing. And it's the owner that reaches out to you hey, let me help you. What do you, and so I think customer support for indie comic creators should be the best possible thing, because you guys are breaking your backs making these books for other people's entertainment, and any issues that you guys have should just be boom, it's done, it's taken care of, here's the solution. But that's my 2 cents as somebody that doesn't know how to make any of those solutions happen. So
that's always the way, isn't it? I know what I want. I mean, again, Amazon's almost in the realm of politics at the moment. Let's not talk about that. For the exact reason of customer service, whereas all the other smaller platforms that you work with, bang, solved, fixed. I've done this extra thing. I've gone out of my way to do this for you. And Amazon has taken a month to help sort out issue 2. And it's still, I mean, you can buy it, but they said it's not available. I'm like, well, I've had sales. Oh yeah. We'll get back to you.
We'll let you know.
Yeah. We'll let you know. Yeah.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thanks.
So any of the other places, let's fund them instead.
Yeah. So speaking of Amazon, not to go on that tangent, but so on your Substack, you wrote a post about is that even necessary? And I'm curious, did you, after making that post on Substack, basically talking hey, is this a necessary evil? We just have to post our books on Amazon and then find other distributors from there. Did you get any, what came of that? Did you find any feedback or hear from any other creators about that?
Not a whole lot. Only a lot of people that, I think that the main reaction is maybe it is necessary. Maybe it's just that necessary evil. But I guess my opinion is that it sort of doesn't have to be. I think where I have been using it, I think where I found it a lot easier. I did also, and it was sort of at the letterer for this book is also translated into Spanish. So we've released it in Spanish at the same time. So it has been it's a lot easier for me as someone who's got a couple of years on Duolingo, and that's about it in terms of my Spanish. But it's a lot easier to sort of put that on Amazon and help find the community there. I think a lot of the Spanish-based community will have come from people like Renzo, who's got a far bigger following than I do, which I'm always very jealous of. But has obviously been producing great quality work for a much longer period of time than I have. But it's been good for that. Outside of that, I think if I had my time again, would I sort of bother putting it there first? I think it would be an add-on, chuck it on Amazon, because there might be some people that find it there, but it wouldn't be, this is out now on Amazon, go find it here, and then these other places. It's available at all these great distributors, and Amazon's sort of in the back pocket.
Yeah, and by the way, Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. Oh, if that's the only place you can get it, want to get it. Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk. So we talked process. We talked like distribution. Let's talk the story itself. So
they've done this backwards, haven't we?
We sure have, and that's totally fine. Sometimes that's how my brain works. Is just, I want to know how, and then the what, and then the where, and the when, and all those things come later. So give me like a synopsis of this first issue specifically, and then like what you can tell about, because the second issue just came out last month, right?
Yeah, it's actually probably almost 4 weeks tomorrow, I think. So it's been
okay.
out for a while. That's gone quick. That's gone quickly.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. Because we're already at election day, and I'm still like, so when's Halloween? So give me like a synopsis for those that don't know of the first issue, and then maybe into the second issue as well.
Yeah. So we mentioned Rachel and the Heads. Rachel and the Heads Estate before. They're a young up-and-coming punk rock band from South London, from Brixton, and we start. I think you showed the page before. We start. They're about to play this gig in essentially in a pub. Just sort of small-time band playing in a pub in London, and they are, let's say, they're getting themselves ready for their after party, if you want to put it that way. They're a band. They're young. We know what rock stars do. So, and that does actually become quite important later on. But so they play this gig, they go on stage, and that was actually that sort of scene, sort of where they're on stage. When you're over at a concert and it's like the second to last song, and they get up on stage, that the singer's like, "Great, I'm going to introduce the band. That's John on drums. That's Kevin on guitar." That was actually a really good, like a really easy way to actually introduce the character names in quite a natural way. But so yeah, they all get up on stage, and then they're backstage in the green room. It's about sort of halfway through the issue. They're backstage in the green room, and they have this explosion. Sort of everything sort of goes to hell outside in the pub, and these, I mean, for want of a better word, and it's what they call them here, these zombies sort of break into their green room and start fighting them. I'm like, geez, what the hell's going on? And they have to fight their way out. And they as they're fighting their way out, they quickly realize, hang on, like, why have I got these, like, not ninja powers, but where do these reflexes come from? How have I just knocked the hell out of these two zombies that were coming down the hallway? What the hell is going on here? And they're trying. So essentially, issue one ends with them escaping the pub and trying to piece together what's going on. And issue two picks up directly from there. That's back in their flat. They've got these theories about what's happening, and think, well, great, okay, well, we're going to have to keep this night going if we're going to see the night through. Essentially, I'm trying to speak around this, but so yeah,
part of me just loves the tap dance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, I don't care about the story anymore. I just want that. So yeah, and so that's where we get to these. So essentially there's this explosion. Everyone that they were with is turned to zombies, and they're trying to work out where they're going. And that's, in a nutshell, that's where issue one. And issue two picks up, and one thing I'm trying to do, and we're with the script and then build throughout the story, is issue one is essentially, it's in a room, it's in a pub. Like almost every page is in one location, and then it leaves this. They're fleeing that. Issue two, so their world gets a little bit bigger. They sort of go to a couple of different locations, still in the local vicinity. They encounter the sort of villains for the first time, and sort of have a bit of a standoff there. They escape, but their world's getting a bit bigger. And then issue 3, as a bit of a teaser, their world gets a lot bigger. So we'll start to see a lot more of London, a lot more of London properly. There is the end of the first 2 issues. One of the big reveals in issue 3. And again, this isn't necessarily giving anything away, but at the last page of issue 1, you see these sort of people in this bunker, essentially watching these TVs and watching stuff unfold. And so a bit of a hint: who are these guys? And then at the end of issue 2, we see these guys again. They sort of meet them for the first time. Like, quick, come in here, we'll help you. So issue 3, their world will expand, not just in London, but we'll start to see a lot more characters introduced, and that's been quite fun, sort of being able to grow the scope of the series in terms of location, in terms of characters, and build that up over time. But that's in a nutshell, it's a punk rock band who are trying to fight their way out of this what appears to be to them a zombie outbreak. And there's a couple of scenes in the first one where, because they're literally escaping the bar, they're using their guitars and their drumsticks and whatever they can get their hands on to sort of fight their way to safety.
Yeah. There is a moment of like when, I forget who it is, but one of them like takes down somebody with a broken bottle, and immediately the other 3 members in the band are like, "What did you just do?" Like, that to me was like, oh, there's more happening here. Okay, all right. And like, the action is so well done. It was definitely like, I read it, I think 3 times before I posted the review, because I was just like, the first time went so fast through it because I was just like, what is happening? What is going on? Oh my God. And then the second time I was like, all right, slow down. And then it happened again where I was like, oh my gosh, look at that. Because the action scenes are so fun to read. And like, the fights are so over the top, but like fit so perfectly into the like, how are you Jackie Chan all of a sudden? It just like super enjoyable stuff. I had a blast reading the first one. Spoiler alert, I really liked the first issue. The second issue, just as fun. Like, super enjoyable read. So I look forward to seeing what more you have. And I love the incremental approach that you've got of like single place, single city, bigger. I think that's really smart writing for what that's worth on your part. So
thank you. If we do get to there's a few story arcs going through my head for sort of volumes 2 to 5. If we do get there, then I mean, essentially they're just an excuse to, where does a band go after they've, made it big in their home city? Well, they go on tour, right? So, so there's more an excuse to sort of take them to different locations and different things. But we'll see where we get to. We've got volume 1 sort of locked away. It's all happening. So that'll be 5 issues all up, and then fingers crossed we can get that to a couple more beyond that.
That's cool. And then you can do tour merch. I mean, I kind of need Rachel and the Heads of State t-shirt with the tour dates and location. Like, I kind of need that in my life.
I'll need to get you one of these. I've got some very basic merch. I haven't done any conventions yet. We've got one coming up. We've got these little pin badges with the logo on it. I can see that going on your shirt there.
Yeah. I have a second jacket that only has like my show logo and the skull thing that's up there in the corner. That's embroidered on the back.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Like, part of me wants to just cover it with like merch and extras and add-ons that I've gotten from books that I've had like on the show and just that I've backed on Kickstarter. Cause I think the majority of the front half of this one is all like nerdy fandom stuff. And on the back is all my music. Like, just keep this one for concerts and music stuff, and then make that one all my nerdy stuff. But then the other part of me is like, it's so clean. Like, it's a white denim jacket with this giant purple and black skull on the back. And I kind of just like how it looks now. So I don't know, but like, it would absolutely go just right on the shoulder patch there.
You almost need to collect them all. Like, it's that halfway stage, right? Where it's like when someone's growing a beard or a mustache out, you're like, that doesn't look good.
Awkward time.
Yeah, exactly. You got to take that like 2 or 3 weeks, don't see anyone, you go on holiday. I mean, I can't grow a beard at all, but like, yeah, you go on holiday and you come back, oh, they've got a beard now, great.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen this little like patchy phase when you get there. You don't want a jacket that's going to be a couple of things. You need it
Right.
as it is or covered.
Yeah, or unless it's like the intentionally a couple things, because I've
Yeah.
seen like it's always so, yeah, this one I didn't bring out until it was like at least 40% covered. And I was like, all right, I have the plan, I've got the layout, I know where I want to put things. And then I just kept finding more open denim to cover. And now it's like I can't fit anything else on here. So I'll get another one.
Why not?
But
And
I don't have
you've
like,
got your own brand now to put it on the back. You can combine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
yeah, it works out well. Anyway, that's nothing about See, this is the beauty of doing a live thing, is like we're just people having a conversation.
Exactly.
It's definitely not a stuffy like interview. I'm not gonna, show you some shocking quote that you said on Instagram 7 years ago and be like, how do you react to that? That's not what this is.
Exactly. Save that for everything else that's going on.
Right. Let them do that stuff and let us have fun with comics and punk rock.
Exactly.
Speaking of punk rock, is punk rock your music of choice, or are you like, no, I actually like Beethoven? Like, where do you land on the scale?
Well, when I'm at work in full concentration mode, I do go put the background classical or the Lord of the Rings theme like soundtrack or something on that's just background music. So yes, definitely that side as well. But no, it is definitely a genre that I was never got to see the Clash live. I've managed to see quite a few sort of the larger old school punk bands, the ones that they keep coming back. And I saw them 10 years ago and they were a lot better then. And they would have been even better 25 years before that.
Yeah.
But no, I think when the music that sort of when I first got into music properly, sort of as a teenager, I was listening to it was a lot of metal, a lot of hard rock, like Iron Maiden are probably still one of my favorite bands, and then a lot of punk rock through that, whether that was the sort of what would have been more modern punk rock at the time, your Green Days, your Blink-182s, and then sort of going back and I guess discovering, I guess a lot of people probably sort of were into them and then discovered the stuff that came before later on, right? If they're of a certain age. But no, I think that was all the references have been that I've got in have been ones I'm like, oh well, I like writing, and you're like, actually, I'll call that, or oh, this would be a good line there, or oh, all this kicks off. Like, what's the time on the phone? Oh, it's 11:58 or 2 minutes to midnight. Like, so like that's just like on the phone screen as a piece of artwork. I was like, no, that has to be that has to be in there, Renzo. That's one that I thought of. But yeah, so that definitely is sort of was very formative, I guess. I think as I've gotten older, I think my music tastes have probably expanded a lot more and encompass a lot more wider music. But no, definitely is. And whenever some of those bands tour, you're always like, okay, I'll go to that one. I haven't seen Blondie before. I saw them last year. And they were playing with Iggy Pop, who is still great. Blondie was more of a let's say it was good to see them. I wish I saw them a long time ago. Yeah. But no, there are others that whenever you see anyone of a certain age, just sort of hit or miss, be like, well, I'm going to go see them still because they're playing down the road in near Brixton actually. So when I saw them there, but a lot quite a broad music taste beyond that, I think. But all the references that we get in there will definitely stick to that genre.
That's great. Yeah, I was similar. So even though the Clash is the one that like they made me fall in love with punk, I definitely was like listening to Blink-182 well before the Clash. And Blink for me, like they're forever. I can mark moments in my life by which album of theirs I'm listening to. And so like if I want to go back to high school, it's either, Enema of the State or Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. If I want to go to like that rough breakup I had after college, like Neighborhoods is the one that I listen to. And so like every album has that like life stages. And then as I'm learning, then like even now as new music comes out, And by that I mean I'm still listening to the same bands. Like,
Wasn't that bowling for soup, right? High school never ends. We're all listening to the same music that we were back then.
It's true. It's true. I just saw Bowling for Soup. I've seen them, I think 4 or 5 times. The last time, so like in Cincinnati, Ohio, like our football team has a big rivalry with their neighbor state, Pennsylvania,
the Bengals,
Pittsburgh
right?
Steelers. Yeah. So we're the Bengals. They've got the Steelers. We don't like each other. Jared, the front guy for Bowling for Soup, comes out and has the Steelers logo on his guitar. And in between songs, some asshole in the front of the concert was like, "Get that shit off your guitar." And it just put him in a bad mood. Like the rest of the show, he was like, bro, this is my guitar. Like, what are you talking about? And he was like, boo. And then some people tried to do the Who Dey thing. I'm like, you're at a punk rock show. No one cares about football here. Stop it.
Exactly. Like, I mean, it's one of those places where we're all here for the same thing. I mean, that guy paid to see him on stage. Like, he doesn't in the band, he doesn't care what he thinks of his guitar. Like, he paid his ticket price. He's getting paid to be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I agree. And I think that's, it's the same with it's sport and politics. They're the two things, aren't they? They just sort of divide people, where music should be what brings people together. You've got everyone there in the place to see the one band. They should all be having a good time together, right? Yeah. That's my view on it.
Yeah, a quote that I heard. So I was working at a radio station here in town, and I was given tickets to go see OAR with Ozo Motley, which is like a very deep cut for me. I got to search the brain for their name. But so OAR, like, they're kind of known for their like fun pop rock type stuff. Super good live. Like, they sound excellent live, but 2 people got in a fight like during their show. And it's like the weirdest. It's like people fighting at like I don't know, some like super happy hippie show. Like, there's nothing, like, everybody's just like doing the sway thing. No one is moshing. Even the people in the pit are just standing there swaying. Like, everybody's happy. And these people got in a fight, and he stopped, like the lead singer stopped the show. And he was like, "Listen, man, no one wants to go to a concert and get punched in the face. Like, we come here to have fun and to feel good. If you're not going to do that, then get out of the show." And like, security was escorting the guy out, and we all, like, they got him out. We cheered for security. And then he was like, "All right, so can we all agree, like, we're just going to have a good time? And like, come on, this should be a positive night for everybody, not that." And I was just like, it's one of those moments, even though it happened 15 years ago, that like, it just, no one likes getting punched in the face. And like, with that setting, it just stuck with me. And so like, yes, music is a unifier. It doesn't matter. I was just talking to Oscar on Sunday, who lives in Peru. So this is a very international week for me, which I love. But I was just talking to Oscar about this, where like, we should be able to find similarities with anybody. And if you can't, like, that's okay. It doesn't mean that they're the enemy, like, just because we have different views on whatever it is, it doesn't mean that we can't still have the same thing, or like find things that we have in common. And I love the indie comics community, because even though comics are being made about all the things and all the topics and all the points of view and perspectives, it's all still coming from a place of, these people love comics. And that is what the predominating voice that comes through is like, comics are just the best. So let's just enjoy comics.
Exactly. And find that thing that's, I think everyone focuses on, I mean, everything's polarized and everything, right? And it doesn't have to be politics. So even music, like, I guess in England it was Blur or Oasis. And if you're not there, you hate each other, right? It's like, but you both like pulp, so just like, that's the thing you've got in common, right? So yeah, I think find that middle ground. I think, if 50% like something, 50% like something else, that says you got to compromise, right? Because you're not going to suit 100% of people. Find the middle ground. Like, where's that gone?
Right. Why can't we, like, everything is so black and white? Like, what happened to gray? And that's
exactly.
I find that I am very comfortable in the gray. There's not much. I'm very anti-AI art. If AI can do my dishes, amazing. If AI is going to take artwork from creatives,
don't.
AI can do the things that I don't want to do, so
Yeah.
I've got more time to do the things I want to do. Don't do the things that I
Don't
want to
flip
do.
that.
Exactly. I don't want to be doing dishes while you write the story.
Yeah, that's not why I want AI.
No, exactly.
Oh, it's good stuff. See, I didn't even think that we were gonna. I ended up going on a soapbox. I'm sorry. I didn't mean.
I could easily go on a soapbox, but we're not going to do that.
Right, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna stay positive. What was what was the last comic that you read that you were just like, this is a great comic?
Yeah, so at the moment I've been reading, and it's been on my list for a long time, and I was listening to another podcast talking about it. I was like, actually, no, stop this. Why am I listening to you review the whole first 5 books? You said spoiler alert at the start. I'm going to go read them, and then I'm going to go back to your podcast and listen to it. So I've been reading Department of Truth recently, which is I mean, not going down the political side, but which has been a lot of fun. And I was at a convention only a couple of weeks ago here in London, and I was up to volume 3, and one of the artists, I guess, because obviously it's not indie, it's Image, maybe one of them.
I think it's
anyway.
Image.
Yeah, and one of the artists who did one of the covers, she was there. I was like, I'm up to volume 3. I'll buy this from you. So, and I bought that with a whole stack of other things that I now have to read, and will sit at this pile next to me and maybe slowly get through. But that's what I've been reading at the moment, and I have actually been recently this week. I haven't watched it this year, but I have been reading V for Vendetta again this week. I do think that maybe it's just the age of it. Like, it's 40 something years old now. I think I think the film holds up better, just some of the characterization. I think there's a lot more depth to Natalie Portman's character in the film than maybe in the series. But so I've been rereading that, and trying to get through this stack of indie comics that I now need to get through since I've just got back from the convention.
Yeah, isn't that a great problem to have?
It's a great problem to have.
I keep trying to explain to my wife, like, you see a bunch of unread comics. I see a bunch of time I'm going to enjoy.
Exactly.
Because I got stacks on stacks. It's stupid. I've got like a recent releases that I'm waiting till the whole arc comes out to read it. I've got like a back issue or mini series. Like, I have 2 standing shelf box things that those are in. I've got all my magazine sized ones together. And then I've got all my Kickstarter rewards that are stacking up, because then I make dumb decisions. Like in October, I was like, I'm not reading anything but horror, because that's what and so like everything got put on the shelf, and I went back to books that I've read before, and like Junji Ito's manga, and just got into like really weird stuff that I was like, I mean, I have it. I've read it before, but I've had it. And so now I'm like, okay, new month.
I will do other things.
Yeah.
Although then obviously we just mentioned there are some zombies in this. They're not the main plot, but there are some zombies in this. So you're keeping that sort of Halloween going a little bit.
Yeah, and it was great. Like, punk rock comics are good any time of the year. And honestly, like, I'm a horror fiend. I love it. That's why I did all horror panels in October and had a blast doing it. Because I just love the genre. Like, you can do so much with it, and it doesn't all have to be like murders and slashers for it to be horror. Like, it can be horror and not a single drop of blood be spilled. And like, that to me is the magic of that genre, because action's not action if you don't have a fight scene, and like, romance is a romance if 2 people don't fall in love. But like, horror can still be horror without some of the main things that people always, oh, it's so bloody, I don't like gore. Like, okay, well, there's still horror without gore. And I agree, honestly. Like, if it's gore just for the sake of gore, that's not scary to me. Like, I'm not interested.
I agree. I don't need to watch those sort of over the top films that, like, if someone gets there, could be watching something that's just an action show or something. Rings of Power was on recently. Someone gets their head cut off, great, don't care. But when it's sort of like that violence for the sake of it, and that, like, it's just sort of gratuitous, I just don't need to watch that. I can spend there's so much I can watch or read. Like, why do I need to why am I going to go pick that?
Right. Yeah, the extreme horror. I saw somebody call it, and I'm like, you're just trying to polish a turd. Like, it's still a turd. It's
Exactly.
still just gore for the sake of gore. So
Exactly.
I don't need that. And that's fine. Let me see. Okay, so all right. So that's the end of my official questions, but that's not the end of this because I have 2, maybe 3 more things that I want you to do. So
Great.
the first is I'm going to take a screenshot to use as the thumbnail for YouTube. And so we're just going to pose and take our picture. Let me get my keyboard shortcut here. I started doing this because it saves me a lot of time on the back end. I used to have to search for when we're not blurry and both people look like they're enjoying themselves and not blinking or whatever. And I was like, you know what? I can just take a screenshot. So, all right. So I'll count us down and we'll take a picture. So, 3, 2, 1, I'll take a few. Great. Okay. So there's that. The other thing that I always like doing at the end of these episodes is I'm going to turn the mic over to you. So I understand as an indie comic creator and just as an indie creator or creator in general, how hard it is to get your voice out there and to have places and spaces to get your point across and have people hear what you want them to hear from you. So I'm going to stop talking. And this is your chance to, if you have anything on your heart, on your mind that you want people to hear from you, it could be about Guns of Brixton. It could be about comics. It could be about why The Clash is the superior punk rock band. The content doesn't matter so much as it's just whatever you want people to hear from you. This is now the time of the show where you get to say that.
Great. I've been Sean Golding. Guns of Brixton is 2 issues are out now. You can get all of the updates on my Instagram. Other than that, basically the content of what we've been talking about today. Support indie comics, support comic creators, follow them, find the middle ground with people and stop fighting over nonsense. And that's where we should all be.
Nailed it. So just so people know, your Instagram, your Substack, and the Guns of Brixton linked on Global Comics are all in this episode description. So if you're watching now, if you're watching at some future time, like a Tuesday at 3:00 instead of 8:00 or whatever, you can find it just by like yeah.
Like, what's the time? It's 2 minutes past midnight now. It's Wednesday for me.
It's high from the future, or from the past. I guess I'm your past, right? You're ahead. Yeah. That's how that works. Yeah. I don't know. It's been a day. So I think that you succinctly said all the things. We'll just erase the last 45 seconds. You can't do that in live. And we'll just pretend like you just ended with this very profound thing of find the middle ground, support indie creators, and go read Guns of Brixton. Do that stuff. Sean, thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Thank you so much.
I have enjoyed this a bunch. Hang tight after I end this. I got some logistics for you. But that is the end officially of this episode. And what's a good podcast without a good tagline? This is mine. Do what's good for you, punks, and go read some indie comics. We are out of here. Let me wait.